We're going to look at ESPN's NFL roster rankings in just a moment, but it is the first day of July, so we are doing a month-long sub-battle with our division foes here at Chat Sports, the Steelers Talk channel and the Ravens Rundown. I didn't even include the Bengals channel because they are such a poverty channel here at Chat Sports, but let's be sure to win this month's race in subscribers, especially against Steelers Talk, so hit that sub button down below. What's going on, Browns fans? Welcome into the Cleveland Browns Report by Chat Sports. Matthew Peterson here with ESPN's NFL roster rankings and a building block piece for the Browns we'll touch on at the end of the show. But let's jump right into it and look at ESPN's roster rankings. They ranked all 32 NFL rosters. No hoops to jump through anything like that because the Kansas City Chiefs and the Philadelphia Eagles at 1 and 2 makes a lot of sense. They were the best AFC and NFC team last year. The Bills, the Dolphins, and the Bengals round out the top 5. Maybe a bit high for Miami, but I do think the Dolphins have a very good roster. The Cowboys at 6, I'm just not a believer in Dallas, but okay, you have Parsons, CeeDee Lamb. I think Dak's kind of overrated, but sure. Chargers, Niners, 7 and 8, I can get behind that. And then Cleveland coming in at 9. I'm not going to lie to you guys. When I clicked on this article, I fully expected them to disrespect the Browns and put them at like 17 or 18. But shout out to some folks who, still have a job, sorry, that's a low blow, in Bristol because they put together a pretty good list here, I would say. So let's break it down by starting with the 4 criterias they had for putting together these rankings, starting with the strongest unit. And they went with the offensive line. And it doesn't even take a diehard Browns fans to know this is one of the best elements of Cleveland's roster. Here's what Mike Clay had to say. Cleveland will return all 5 starters to arguably the league's best offensive line. Tackles Jedrick Wills and Jack Conklin are terrific pass blockers. Center Ethan Posick was elite in both pass and run game last season. And guards Joel Bitonio, who didn't miss a single snap last year, and Wyatt Teller are terrific. And Mike is spot on here. The Browns do have a top 3 offensive line. They're right there with the Philadelphia Eagles in my book. You've got Posick, who, go back to when we were dying to get J.C. Treader once they lost Nick Harris to the season, and Posick casually finishes as the 3rd best center in PFF's rankings. Joel Bitonio, he is right there with Zach Martin, Quentin Nelson, Chris Lindstrom, the top 3, 4, 5 guards of the world. And if the worst element of your offensive line is a middle-of-the-pack left tackle, you've got a pretty good thing going for you. Yes, I'd like to see Wills take a bigger step forward, but I agree. The strongest unit is either the offensive line or the cornerbacks because Emerson, Denzel Ward, and Greg Newsome, that's a lockdown secondary right there if they're playing at their highest level, which we didn't see a ton of last year for some of those guys, but the offensive line was consistent. Now, moving on to the second part of ESPN's article here, the weakest unit on this Cleveland Browns roster. Again, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure this one out. It's defensive tackle depth, okay? Here's what Clay said. This roster is at least solid across the board, leaving me to choose a position at which Cleveland added a high-impact player, Dalvin Tomlinson. That addition is huge, but depth remains problematic. With Jordan Elliott, Perrion Winfrey, Maurice Hurst, and rookie Siaki Ika among those battling for work. This is a concern for a defense that ranked 31st in rushing EPA allowed in 2022. And I completely agree and echo what Clay is saying here. We know we have 4 great defensive linemen. How about this? 3 great proven defensive linemen in Myles Garrett, Dalvin Tomlinson, and Zadarius Smith. You have an up-and-coming player in Obo Okoronkwo. And then you have a big question mark, right? When it's 1st and 10 and you want to stop the run, you probably don't want to have Garrett, Okoronkwo, and Smith out there. You want to kind of get a rotation to keep someone fresh for a 3rd and 9. So who's sitting next to Dalvin Tomlinson, right? Is it Jordan Elliott? The way he played last year, I sure hope not. But there's really no better option, right? Unless Winfrey takes a big maturity step forward and on the field step forward, might be Ika the rookie, but he's just a rookie. We don't know a whole lot about him when the pads come on at the NFL level. At the end of the day, I don't think this run defense needs to be top 10. It's not the 1980s anymore. Teams are not running it as much. It's definitely important, and the Browns found out last year you could have a bad defensive, like a bad run-stopping group and be okay. What you can't have is the worst run-stopping group in the NFL or the second worst, right? You just can't finish last. It's kind of like, I don't need to outrun a bear. I just need to outrun Patrick Seaman. You just can't be the worst run-stopping group. So for Cleveland, they just got to go from 31st to like 20th, 17th, right? Middle of the pack. That's okay. You can stay above water. You can tread water. You've got a great pass rushing unit. You usually don't win a lot of Super Bowls with a great run-stopping DT. It's the pass rush, and you have that. But you just can't let the defensive tackle hold you so far back that the slowest man in this relay is a 400-pound monster. So with that being said, we shift gears to the X factor for this team as ESPN picked Deshaun Watson. Can Watson be an X factor? I always viewed X factors as someone that wasn't a headline name, but someone who's a bit lower level that would be like, not the MVP, but the most important player, the glue guy. But Deshaun Watson was the X factor. Here's what Seth Walder said. The range of outcomes here is absolutely massive for both Watson and the roster, which is otherwise strong outside of the huge question at quarterback. If Watson can get back to his level of play from 2020, when he led the Texans to a 4-12 record but had a 63.7 QBR, the Browns could be Super Bowl contenders. Seth really hit the nail on the head here, right? If Watson comes out and he chucks the football for 4,500 yards and 30-plus touchdowns, this team is playing a lot of football in January. The golf bags are staying away all the way until the end of February. But it is a fair thing to point to raise. Will he return to that 2020 form after sitting out all of 2021? And last year, having a lot of good throws, having a lot of good moments and good plays, but he never quite put together 4 quarters of brilliant football. I think his best game was probably the Commanders game, which is really not a whole lot to write home about when the best game comes against a team that didn't make the playoffs. But I am a firm believer in Deshaun Watson bouncing back to that Pro Bowl level form. Having the whole offseason as the number 1 quarterback and not being QB2 behind Jacoby Brissett and having an offense that is tailor-made for you. So, hypothetical situation, right? Nancy sees you walking out of the shower. No. Deshaun Watson finishes with 65 completion percentage, 4,200 yards. For reference, that would probably be like 6th to 8th in NFL in terms of NFL leaders. 25 touchdowns and 10 interceptions, right? If you had an opportunity, like deal or no deal, to lock those numbers in, would you take that deal? Yes or no? Do you want to swing a little bit higher, right? Go for 4,500 yards and turn those 25 touchdowns into 30 touchdowns. And maybe the interceptions goes from 10 to 8. Or would you take that and run? I'm a wild dude. I'm feeling it. Put me down for no. I think he could do better than those numbers right there. I'm that demented in the head at the moment because I am so drunk on the Deshaun Watson hype train for this season. Fourth and final pillar of this article was a non-starter to know, and they went with Cleveland's 3rd-round selection out of Baylor, defensive tackle Tiaka Ika. Here's what Seth wrote. The 3rd-round pick played mostly at 0 and 2/2-eye techniques at Baylor, according to Sports Info Solutions tracking, and he generated 30 pressures from those spots over the past 2 seasons, second most among all FBS players in that span. When you look at what he did at Baylor after transferring from LSU, pretty decent numbers for a guy that's just supposed to be a brick wall in the middle of the defense and a boulder no one can move to get to the second level. Now, the hiccup is he was much better, at least statistically, in 2021 compared to 2022. Those sacks, those tackles for loss, a lot of that came in his first season in Waco. His second season, not so much, which, hey, in round 3, I'm not looking for Ika to fill up the stat sheet, right? That's not what his job is on this team. His job is to allow the linebackers to get into the backfield and for for offensive lines to not have to put 3 guys on Myles Garrett, but to have to respect the pressure that comes up the middle. I think the first 2 weeks of the Browns training camp, which will get underway a week earlier than every other team, excluding the Jets because of the NFL Hall of Fame game, will be a big tell for Cleveland. When it comes to the guys in the trenches, the offensive line, the defensive line, you really can't come out of rookie minicamp, OTAs, or minicamp with a good sense of whether or not they've got that it factor. There's no pads on, right? They're just bumping titties essentially for a couple of days in the hot northeast Ohio sun. So once the pads come on, the coaching staff will get a much better clue as to whether or not Ika can play at the NFL level right out the gate, or if he's going to need some coaching. And he won't be a redshirt freshman, but he's not going to be a starter his first season. Now let's look at the Bleacher Report article that identified a building block for all 32 NFL teams, and they went with Martin Emerson. Now, there were some requirements to be included in this. You had to be on your rookie contract still. You could not have gotten a contract extension yet, and you cannot have made a Pro Bowl. So they are looking for some of the under-the-radar young guys, and Martin Emerson fits that to a T, right? PFF ranked him as the 23rd best cornerback last year out of 118 qualifying players. That was the number 1 for any Browns corner in 2022. Here's what Alex Ballantyne wrote. The 6'2", 201-pounder didn't have any interceptions, but he got a hand on 15 passes and allowed a completion percentage of just 50.5% and a stingy 5.4 yards per target. Quarterbacks had a 77.6 passer rating when throwing Emerson's way. He did not have an interception last year. If you count the preseason game against the Jags, he had a pick 6 to end the first half. But 15 pass breakups, 1 tackle for loss. Those lengthy arms really came to use for him, especially as he got more and more snaps and somewhat became a starter, starting 6 games for Cleveland. He got in that defensive rotation a lot more, and he was the best cornerback on this team. When you look at his coverage stats, just a hair over 50% completion percentage when thrown his way, 490 yards and 3 touchdowns allowed, and then that rating of 77.6. So, question to kind of round out the show here. Who is the best cornerback on this team? The easy answer and the right answer is Denzel Ward. I would not pick Newsome over Martin Emerson. I would not pick those guys over Ward. But if you want to go with Newsome or you want to go with Emerson, part of me salutes you because that's a bold take to make right now. And it might be correct in a few years if Martin Emerson really catapults after a strong rookie season, or for Greg Newsome, if he gets back to a role that he's comfortable in after being tossed into the nickel position last year and just it was a, sink or swim moment and he sunk. So let me know who you think the best cornerback is in the comment section. Now it is Saturday afternoon and Patrick Seatman was very kind enough to step into the studios with me today and film a video for the Dog Pound because he has not been behind the camera for a little while now. He's been very busy here.
I haven't, but I'm excited to be back, Petey, and I've heard about all the hype around the pick-a-card time off-season mode, so I'm finally excited to get my crack at it.
So your partner in crime, producer Rolly, is awful at this.
He's awful at this?
Yes,
Yeah.
So it is up to you to try and carry the weight for the producer squad.
All right, I think I'm going to go bold here.
Yeah.
I'm going ace of diamonds.
I like that.
I'm going to go ace.
Rolly comes in here with, chicken shit 4 diamonds.
No. I'm going ace of diamonds.
I won with a king of diamonds.
Okay, you gotta go face card or ace to win.
Okay, you're going to go ace of diamonds?
Yeah.
I'm going to go with give me jack of clubs.
Okay, let's go. Let's go.
Ready? One more cut for good measure. Rolly's going to lose it. 2 of spades.
Oh.
I think that's back-to-back 2 of spades, actually.
Oh.
Wow. That is brutal. Okay, that's it for today's show. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you guys later.